Hello, friends, clients, and fellow financial advisors. My name is Ron Bullis, and I am the CEO and founder of Lifeworks Advisors. My guest on today's show is someone who's consulted and advised many of the leading RIAs, independent broker-dealers, wirehouses, and banks in the wealth management industry, specifically focusing on areas of revenue, growth strategies, and technology. He has decades of experience consulting and working at the intersection of humans and technology. And he's someone that I believe has a very unique viewpoint and insight to share with us around how we can prepare our firms and our practices to win the future of advice. He also publishes what I consider to be one of the best resources in our industry for news and insights on what's going on. It's called the Wealth Management Weekly Report. Welcome to the Future of Advice, Gavin Spitzner. Good afternoon.
Great to be with you, Ron.
It is. It's fabulous to be here in New York City. We got this amazing view of Central Park here in the background. We're sitting in the Peak 6 Apex Clearing corporate offices here in Manhattan, and shout out to them for letting us use their space to shoot this video.
Thanks, Bill.
Yes, thanks, Bill, and the team. So I've been really excited to have this conversation. A few friends of mine and people in the industry that I really respect said, you have to get Gavin on the podcast. He has a very unique vantage point. So before we get into talking about the future of advice, take us through quick bio, background. Who is Gavin Spitzner? What do you do with Wealth Consulting Partners? And we'll go from there.
Very good. Well, great to be with you. Although in some ways it's great to be with anybody these days.
Yes.
So, thanks for meeting with me in person. Gavin Spitzner, President of Wealth Consulting Partners. What do? We consult at financial institutions on growth strategies and really the intersection, the alignment of technology, processes, talent, solutions, and work to harmonize those things, align those things to deliver great transformative client experiences. If I had to sum it up, that's how I would say it, although I do a lot of things. Been in business 30 years, all different aspects of marketing, sales, technology, supporting financial planning practices. Worked with Merrill Lynch way back in the 90s as they were rolling out their financial planning capabilities and separate accounts and consulting. So that was part of my formative years. And been working with financial institutions on the consulting side for the past, 6.5 years. So RIAs, banks, broker-dealers, the occasional fintech, really at this intersection of business strategy, technology, practice management to help deliver modern, differentiated client experiences.
Yeah, and this is, integration of humans, integration of technology, client experience, growth strategies. I mean, we're going to have a lot to talk about because I think the integration of human capabilities and technology and doing that right, I think is going to be one of the most important keys to success in the future. So you started forever and ever and ever ago in the industry, but you were never a financial advisor, right? You were kind of always on the product development, consulting, large corporation side.
Yeah, business strategy. Yeah. I was at Prudential a bunch of years.
Okay.
Doing a variety of roles, helped take them public, was involved with the JV with Wachovia, and then very deeply involved with the managed accounts business. And so that took me into the independent space because we took our platform that had served about 9,000 Prudential Securities advisors, and we took that out and we built it out on the internet as we saw this breakaway movement, wirehouse reps going independent. They wanted to backfill, recreate the capabilities they had on the consulting business at their new shops. So we began servicing those types of firms. And then I led the business development effort early on as we started to explore who else needs an open architecture approach, consulting support to drive fee-based business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in the last 20 years, right, fee-based business has been the ticket.
Absolutely.
Right? Talk to me real quick too, and if we have some time, I'd like you to share some work that you're doing with the execution project. So my coach, Ray Scalafani from ClientWise, is also involved in that. I'm kind of just an observer on the outside, but I'm very curious as to the work you guys are doing there. If there's anything that you can kind of share, like how you got involved, what that organization's doing.
Sure. That's one of my absolute passions. That came about through Steve Gresham,
Okay.
who saw the need in the space to really attack the next chapter. This transition, we see 10,000 boomers turning 65 every day, and probably more than that, I think at this point, retiring every day, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. And the industry is really just not organized around that, so they're not optimizing how we serve those clients with solutions, with the way that we engage them with technology. So it's been very much built around that, helping firms think through those strategies and how to execute.
And it's
Hence the name.
My understanding too, it's an interesting conglomeration of people from all different types of companies and different segments of the industry working together to try and solve some of these challenges. Correct?
The next chapter specifically. So Steve and us on the execution project side have kind of galvanized this effort with probably 30 different executives in a broad array of providers, financial institutions that are actively trying to develop better solutions for that segment.
Yeah, it's something fascinating for those people that are listening or watching. If they're not familiar with it, I would highly encourage them to go check out the website and read through what's being done there.
Absolutely.
I just find it really encouraging to see leaders in the industry from different companies and different backgrounds, like collaborating together on something like this. So let's get kicked off with, you mentioned a couple of things with the execution project, talked about 10,000 baby boomers a day, turning 65, retiring. Maybe a great segue here for you to outline one to many, pick a few of what you think the biggest challenges are that maybe our industry and advisors are facing today, and we'll pick them apart as you lay them out.
Well, for me, it starts with time. To deliver the quality and the scale of advice to the people that need it and deserve it takes time. And we have a lot of advisors that are still spending way too much time on things that don't add that much value, that have been commoditized. They got in the business because they like picking stocks. We spend a lot of time on all those aspects of portfolio construction, trading, rebalancing, things that technology does a whole lot better than humans. So in many ways, I think advisors and what they like to do is they become their own worst enemy. It's not what clients are looking for. Clients want guidance. They want advice. They want it to be about them. So our industry is really, if you look at the technology, if you look at the websites of advisors, it's very investment centric.
Yes.
And it's not about the client. So how do we become much more client centric? So I think, for me, the more interesting technology capabilities and solutions they're the newer ones because they're not encumbered by these historical, these legacy type approaches, and they can start clean to say, if we were building from scratch, which we are, how do we organize everything around the client and make sure we know them intimately and help them know themselves? So I think that for me is where the industry is going, is how do we use our technology, use data, the way that we engage with you upfront and then ongoing to help you understand what's important to you. Because we talk about, financial planning and, do I have enough money to not outlive blah, blah, blah. And it's just so basic. It's so rudimentary. Calculators can do that. That's not really hitting people in the gut of how do I apply my wealth, whatever I've done, optimize it and apply it to the things that matter to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I see a very similar pattern where if you look at the age dispersion of advisors in the United States, right, it kind of follows the age dispersion of the population. And, the average age of an advisor is maybe 60 or something like this now, right? And they grew up in an era that was primarily sales focused, stockbroker forward kind of thinking, and then they maybe transitioned into managed money. And a lot of them are still, that's where they believe they're adding the value is, well, this is how we design portfolios, or this is our investment strategy.
And not to say that stuff's not important.
Yes.
I get criticized sometimes for completely downplaying that. Yeah. It's important. There's ways to add value there that not everybody is doing in terms of whether it's custom indexing, tax management, certainly wealth transfer processes and solutions. But my point is, if your calling card is, I can help you beat a benchmark by 57 basis points, that's not hitting me where I live. That's not, it's like, okay, great. And there's lots of solutions. There's robo solutions that can do that, keep the costs down. That's not the value.
Yeah, I guess, and I was agreeing. I think where I was going to go with it was you have this, not even an identity crisis, right? But this reimagining that advisors that have been in the business a long time, I think, have to do. They have to reframe, to steal, something from Ray Scalafani's book, You've Been Framed. They have to reframe themselves in the value proposition, because I do think more and more clients, and especially the next gen, right? The millennial age group. I was called an old millennial by Megan Carpenter on one of our podcasts. Or that's how she labeled both of us. And my generation, I think, is looking at this and saying, money to me means how I want to live, right? It's more about the values and what I can do with it, as opposed to purely a rate of return or what I own. In fact, I'd rather have a lot more control over the types of things that I invest in that align with my values.
Right. And we're to blame. The industry, we've conditioned clients to think about the world that way. We haven't taught them how they should think. And frankly, the bar is just very low. So mediocrity can get by when we're at all-time highs, bull market, high after high after high. A lot of bad practices can just skate by. And to your point about aging advisors, if you're, in your 50s, 60s, and you're in this for another 3, 5, 7 years, you can probably get by. If you've got a nice sized book of clients around your same age, you probably don't have to change. So, as I'm advising firms and advisors, I'm saying, are you really focused on growth? Are you looking at this over 10, 20, 30, 50 years, really looking to run to create a business, a lasting business? Then now is the time to step back, really step back, and like you said, reframe, think about, if we were starting from scratch, what would the client experience look like? What would that client journey look like? How do we attract the people we want to serve? What matters to them? And then how do we align technology? How do we use data? How do we even organize our teams and think about roles differently than how we may have structured our businesses in the past?
So, great segue, because one of the things I wanted to ask you is about next gen talent. It's something on the Future Advice, previous podcasts that gets brought up, whether it's, the interview with Bill Capuzzi from Apex from a custodial standpoint, or with Megan Carpenter from FICOM Partners talking about building diverse teams. There seems to be lots of discussion here and a recognition of the importance of it, but maybe not a lot of action at I'm going to pick on RIAs because I own an RIA, right? Not a lot of action maybe at the RIA level, whether it's compensation models haven't shifted, or they haven't thought through what the client experience needs to be and reorganize their teams around this. Talk to us a little bit about the challenge from your vantage point and as it relates to recruiting and retaining next-gen talent to deliver the promise we make to our clients.
I think about it in terms of intentionality. The excuses I see, the talent's not there.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that excuse.
It's BS.
Yeah, that's BS.
It's BS.
Okay.
All it takes is intentionality. And it takes, as I was saying before, it takes perhaps rethinking about team dynamics and structure. So some of the larger firms are actually doing a good job bringing in younger talent, diverse talent, as potentially a tech expert, as a client concierge, somebody that's going to hold the client's hands around digital client portals and different things. It's a great way where they're able to apply their expertise, help the advisor who may not be as savvy, help the client who may not be as savvy, and start to build a relationship as you start to think longer term. How are we going to bring these people through through a work journey, a career journey, a career path, and help them add value over time?
Yeah, I think it was in one of your recent, maybe not recent because I read all of them, your weekly wealth management report. where there was an interesting, they were talking about the business model and how the industry compensates, kind of this eat what you kill model, right? And I still see this at a lot of the large firms. I mean, I started at a large national insurance company, and they're a fantastic insurance company, but whatever you sold, you made 55% of, or whatever the number was. And you know, if you're a young person graduating college and you're talented and you've got student loans and you're kind of looking at the world, and your friends go off to corporate America and they make, you know, $60,000 to $100,000 starting salary, and you're at zero, right? It doesn't seem to me to be a lack of talent out there. It seems to me that we need a reorganization of thinking about investing in those people. Right. Like, hey, you're very valuable even if you don't have a client to bring in the door.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the traditional models of you can be an advisor if you can bring some group of people through. You're never going to get the change that we want to see in the industry. So compensation practices, incentive compensation practices, ways to make sure things are aligned is ultra critical. And that goes to not just talent acquisition and retention and career pathing, but behavioral, right? There's still, maybe it's on the larger end of the firms, perhaps less RIA, where things are focused on traditional product sales, or even just quantity of plans being done versus quality. So I always say to my clients, okay, it's great that you're measuring how many plans for the firm and per advisor and all of that, but how are you tracking the quality of the plans? And how are you tracking with the client what's happening, where are the gaps to those plans? So that's an area where I'm really interested in, where I think technology can help to better track real time where are those gaps, and make it a part of an ongoing process where the advisor, the client are collaborating. And I know I've taken us completely off the talent side.
No, this is an interesting one, because I think that, well, one, as a young, you know, startup RIA, Lifeworks, we've been trying to figure out, how do you measure the quality of a financial plan? Is it, I mean, there's a technical piece that you could very easily, I think, assess. Like, was the math done correctly? Were the outputs, like, was there a level of rigor associated with the work?
Sure.
But you can have the most rigorous, detailed, technically proficient financial plan in the world and hand that client 100 pages, and the client goes like, blah, 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 right? How are you helping firms? I want this selfishly for me. How are you helping firms think about measuring the quality? And or what maybe technology platforms are out there that you're starting to see or interact with that are helping with this too?
So I guess I look at it two ways. There's some type of an objective review of what does a quality plan look like.
Okay.
What shows us, and it also ties into CRM, what tells us that we know this client intimately. It's more than, oh, they have a retirement goal and a college goal. Oh, we have a financial plan.
That's the easy stuff. That's table stakes.
So that's one thing I focus on with firms is whether it's through the plan or through CRM. Ultimately, I think most advisors saying CRM is my Bible. That's if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. And so are you able to track upfront, ongoing, and demonstrate, I know this client, I know what matters to them. Then align that with actions. So more the behavioral side, are they taking action? And I think this goes to even how you bring on clients in the first place. Do you have a discipline of not just taking anybody in that has a pulse and a few dollars, but this is somebody that values my advice and I won't say will, but may follow it, because obviously there's the plan, and then there's life, and lots of shit happens in between.
Well, and I mean, I've said to new prospects and clients coming in all the time, my job isn't to find a client that just does everything I tell them to do. In fact, that would be boring. But somebody that appreciates the back and forth, the debate, the rigor, the thought process, the trying to ask the right questions is in itself the work.
Right. That wants that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
I think that is the key. And it's not easy to figure that out up front, but I think a little more time spent up front giving the prospect a taste of this is what working with us feels like goes a long way. And if you have a good client experience in the process, it's going to help you close that business.
I've told advisors over the last few years in our team as well that I think the robo-advising space and the do-it-yourself space is actually one of the greatest gifts that advisors can have, because we can say to a client with full sincerity right now, look, you could be the do-it-yourselfer. Like, I like to work on my house and do home renovation projects and love the Home Depot that's 4 miles from my house, and it loves me and my Amex card. I
just went to Home Depot, had a blast.
I could very easily, maybe not so easily right now because finding good contractors is difficult, but I could hire that work away. But I find a little pleasure in, doing some of those, kind of manual labor jobs myself. And so what I've been telling our team and other advisors is, look, if you say to the client, I can help you figure out what you need to go buy at Home Depot, right, in this metaphor, and then you can do it on your own. Right? And then there's a million, maybe not a million, but there's thousands of really good online robo-advising, free trading apps, do-it-yourself space. Or we say to the client, or you're the person that, whether it's because of your time or you just don't desire to learn it, or you'd rather not risk your life savings in this regards, like that's kind of the division we've set. And then we tell people, look, we have a list of like 10 different, online platforms that we think are really well thought out and well designed and have a good structure behind them, and they're virtually free.
Right. Yeah, or whether you do that or do it yourself. I think you spoke with Andrew Jones recently with Facet Wealth.
Yeah.
I think they've got the right mindset, which is the product is advice,
it's the advice
and guidance.
Yeah.
Investment management, sure, we can do that.
It's an important piece, but it's something that it's more on the technical side, and as technology keeps developing, it should allow advisors and firms to do that at speed and scale and provide a better outcome, right?
Absolutely.
So a question that we've not been asking every new client that comes on, but I think it's a good one we got to get better at, is just asking the clients, like, how are you going to measure the success of our relationship and our outcome, right? And if you hear things like, well, my investments outperformed the S&P 500, it's like, you're not going to probably find value in what we do because we're not measuring ourselves based on outperforming an arbitrary benchmark.
Right. That's a discipline not everyone has, and it's a recipe for long-term success. Might not help you win everything, but that's okay.
Well, and
because those clients are going to take you off your game completely. You can't scale your business when you're serving all these clients that are measuring you in different ways.
Well, and I think that one of the key takeaways I had from the first, say, 10 years of being in the business at a good insurance company, but an objective when I started, I remember it well in training, they said, look, by the 10th year, you should have 1,000 clients. Now, I sat back and did some simple math and said, well, if I want to talk to every one of my clients just once a year, that's 1,000 meetings. I have roughly 200, maybe 225 work days a year. And I did some math and I'm like, at that point, I'm having one meeting a year, 4 times a day, and that's all I do. And what then comes out of that is they talk about segmenting your clients and getting rid of the small clients.
Your B clients, your C
and
clients.
I think to myself, like, all the promises you made to the people that got you to where you are, you dump them as soon as you can get the client with the larger investment account. It seems to me to be a very self-serving approach that clients, I think, are starting to feel, right?
Yeah, retention rates, that's one of the things that bugs me. Retention rates are off the charts for most advisors and advisory firms, and there's not that much fee pressure. There's fee pressure on asset managers, not on wealth managers. Teeny tiny decreases over the past few years. But I look at that and say, I don't care. Clients, they don't know any better. They accept mediocrity. If you look at the biggest drivers of clients leaving, it's not performance, and these stats have been steady for 25 plus years. It's communication, and it's just service. So you're telling me if you could do a horrible job planning, even performing, and if you return my call, that's good enough. That's not a good, that bar's not where it
the upside, I guess, then for, next gen growth hungry advisors is the bar is low. and you can
Some of the best.
really set the stage for what you're going to deliver.
I am so impressed by some of the young advisors, advisory firms, when I look at how they're building their practices. And I guess they have the benefit of starting from scratch. They've seen what works, what doesn't work. I'm just blown away. I mean, some folks in their mid-20s that are standing up practices. You see their website, and I get to know them and like how do they run their practice, and I'm blown away. The next gen is solid. I'm excited. Problem is, all the assets are with folks that are content.
Yeah. Yep.
They're content, and their clients aren't complaining because they don't know any better. They don't know what good looks like. So it's going to be this is one of those things where not a lot's going to change in the near term, but in the long term, it will. We're going to be in a very different place in 10 and 15 years.
So, wasn't on my question list, but while you're here, let's pick up on it. There's a lot that's talked about the large coming transfer of wealth, right? From the boomers to, and I mean, I'm jokingly feeling like maybe the millennial generation is going to get skipped and it's all going to go to like, my teenage kids, what are they, Gen Z or Y or whatever. But that might be a long time for young next-gen advisors to kind of, slog through and grow and pound on doors. The challenge for maybe an established firm is going to be how to retain those assets. So I'd like your opinion on that. And then the flip side is the advice to the next-gen advisor around staying disciplined and waiting for this opportunity to unfold, because I do believe it's coming. It's
been coming for a long time now.
Yeah.
And with people living longer, it's keeps getting kicked down the street. So I think, the numbers are the same like every year, 50 trillion, 60 trillion, whatever it is. We're still a ways off. I would not be, overly emphasizing that as a strategy, but getting to know, especially helping the children, to your point, the millennials, maybe the boomers. I mean, there's a lot of boomers that have parents that are doing quite well still, helping them and becoming their, real life advisor, helping them work with their parents on the things that they should be doing, more longevity planning, certainly wealth transfer strategies, maybe in their lifetime. Again, they don't know any better. Maybe they have a will, a lot don't, but they're not thinking about, and no one's giving them guidance on how to, while they're still here, turn their assets into the things that align with what matters to them. And with children, grandchildren, I think good advisors really, they help them think through what makes sense, because we see lots of cases where, let's say you're very wealthy and you have the ability, the means to really change G2, G3's lives. Is that necessarily a good thing?
Yeah.
So I think that I've seen some advisors do amazing things, helping them think through what you can do it, but what should you do? And how do you make sure that they're leading meaningful lives and not just living off the trust fund?
Yeah, I mean, a quote that sits on my wall at my office, it's one of my favorites, by Robert Frost. It says, "Every affluent father wishes he knew how to give his sons the hardships that made him rich."
Exactly.
Right. This is an interesting one around helping our clients think through the values and the reason behind it, not just about the money and the technical piece and the dollars and stuff like this. Yeah. One of the other challenges that I see in this space, and I'd like to get your take on this, is the cost and complexity of running an independent RIA seems to have kind of come down significantly, like the work that was done by Kitsis with like the XY Planning Network. It's like anybody can start a scratch RIA and go from there. I don't think that's necessarily true. 3.5 years into doing it and trying to do it right, looking at what actually goes into the amount of work we spend doing compliance and things like this. So I'm sensing that the trends may be moving in the other direction, that the amount of compliance and complexity and technology that's needed to run an independent firm is actually higher than what I think many advisors might be thinking if they're looking at going independent. Talk to me a little bit about whether I'm wrong in that, I'm perfectly happy to be told I'm wrong, or what you're seeing there in terms of the cost, the complexity, the man hours that it takes to actually run an independent RIA. So if I'm an advisor sitting in a wirehouse or a large insurance company or maybe a BD and I'm thinking I'm going to go independent, right? I can do it for $5,000 based on what I read here on this website. I'm going to go do it.
Yeah,
What do you see then?
There's some high-profile examples that would make you think that you can do it on the cheap. And there's some amazing advisors, solo advisors, that are running hundreds of millions of dollars on a very small expense base. They're the exception. They're not the rule. And if you want to build a business, you need to build for scale, and often that means spending more than you might need today so that you've got scalable infrastructure and the capabilities and the resources to really grow into it. So and you talk about breakaways. I've seen more breakaways that are onto their second and third move in 3 to 5 years than you would believe.
Wow.
Again, like clients, they don't know what they don't know. They hear certain things and they go down certain paths and they find it's not all that it was made out to be. And they realize they're paying too much to some outside TAMP or something. They're paying for things they don't need. They've lost control of their process, and now they go to plan B and they take a shot at something. They hear, oh, this tech is good. They're using this tech. I'm going to use that. And it in no way reflects the way that they want to run a practice, the clientele that they serve. So, my mantra is always slow down. Who do you serve? Who do you want to serve? What's your client journey? How do you take them from? How are you attracting them? How are you managing them through the life cycle? Then figure out your technology and how does it all come together. And most, they underestimate the complexity of trying to build something. That's why you see one of the areas I'm most fascinated by, and we've got some common friends doing this, where on the RIA side, they're basically creating what I would call an RIA TAMP.
Yes. Yep.
Building out, doing the hard work of the technology integration, providing support and services around it, so that as an advisor, I don't have to do that. If that's not my DNA, I'm not a builder. I want to just focus on growing my business, serving clients. I'm happy to pay, whether it's percent of revenue, basis points, for somebody else to have done that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the recent news with Mariner acquiring Advice Period and Marty Bicknell and Steve being friends, what I took away from that whole thing was understanding where you really want to be in the space. Do you want to be the business owner, the executive, or do you want to be the person serving clients? There's not a right or a wrong there, right? I had this conversation with Marty. Was most advisors really get into the business because they love serving people, and then it's kind of like the EMyth, right, from Michael Gerber. They wake up a few years or a decade later and they're spending more time doing compliance and managing people and dealing with legal stuff. And they're like, I don't want this.
Not why I got in the business.
Not why I got in the business. Yeah.
Right. It's and things evolve. I think people change, and they sometimes. I think the perception, at least, it's easier than ever to do it, has turned a lot more people into business owners.
Yes.
But then you also see all the M&A going on to that point. I think that's one. There's a lot of drivers, but that's one of them, where folks wake up and they say, I'm not doing the stuff I love. I've turned into a chief compliance officer. That's not
I've
why I
turned
got
into the guy
this business.
saying no to everybody on my team.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when I see, especially in probably the 1 to 5 billion range, when firms are selling, it's often that, where you have partners of that firm saying, hey, we've grown like crazy. This has been amazing, but I'm not doing the stuff I love anymore. I'm willing to give up some of the equity, give it all up, whatever it is, and be able to monetize that, but then also to reshape what I'm doing day to day.
So in kind of the setup here, we've been talking about some challenges. So you mentioned time, right? And I think that the time that it takes to deliver the service to the client. Technology is going to be the answer for some of that.
Sure.
but is potentially another answer going to be like hyper specialization in our industry, where people are going to get very niche or very unique about their service offerings and build to a certain size? Like, do you see that as being, a trend that's coming?
It's happening. Probably not. The examples that are out there tend to get amplified.
Okay.
So I'd say the reality is we're not there yet.
Yep.
But whether it's within a smaller practice that just specializes in dentists or pilots or
Whatever.
doctors, whatever, or a bigger firm, this is something I'm starting to see. Bigger firms that start to almost look at like a hub and a spoke and have that common
set of resources
that everyone can benefit from, but then you can spoke it out around specialized capabilities. So even some of the bigger firms are starting to explore that. It makes all the sense in the world because you can scale that. Then you can scale, you're going to attract people so much better, where that you're just known, if I'm in this cohort, Ron's the guy for me.
Yeah.
Ron knows the space, knows my specific issues in terms of cash flow, whatever it is, and can advise me better. So from a lead gen standpoint, it's lead gen on steroids, but then also in terms of the resources that you bring to bear. So we talked before about things like Next Chapter, people with longevity planning issues. If that's the clientele you're serving, and if I was an advisor, that's who I'd be serving. It's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
And there's so much more that can be done. Then you can really shape a client experience, shape the resources you bring, and personalize not just the financial advice, but the non-financial content, the things that matter to me, and look for ways to scale that.
Mm-hmm. Do you see our industry, and this is shifting a little bit to talk about the future, I still want to be on the challenges, but do you see our business model maybe starting to evolve to look more like a professional services model like law firms and CPA firms have kind of grown to, or is that not something that we're likely to see in our industry?
I hope so.
Expound on that.
That's, for me, that should be the aspiration, is that the financial advice business is seen as a profession.
Not as a sales industry.
Not as a sales industry. As a profession, all the talk, and I think most of it's just inside baseball, advisor to advisor, around fee models and asset-based fees are the wrong way, and it should be fee for service, all these things. There's something there. I'm not saying that that's not relevant, but it's not the core issue. The core issue is as a profession, you don't, when your doctor sees you and she gives you, consultation and prescribe, you're not saying, I don't. Wait, you want to charge $800? Maybe $600.
I'll take this medicine and this medicine, but not that medicine.
Hospital bills, people dispute, and that's fine. That's a product. You can almost look at it as a product. But consultation, professional advice, if you do a good job delivering that, it should be seen as just like doctor, lawyer, accountant. I'm paying a fee, however that fee is calculated. If I feel like it's a fair fee, I'm paying that for the benefit of your advice.
One of the things that drives me nuts, and my team always teases me because they say one of these things is like I have 100 things, but our industry allows advisors to use titles interchangeably. Financial advisor could be a wirehouse person, could be somebody at a large insurance firm, could be an independent RIA like myself. We could have completely different comp structures, completely different incentives. I might be working at a firm that manufactures products, and so therefore I have to sell a certain percentage of them. Talk to me about whether you think that it would be wise for our industry to try and push towards maybe where, again, the other professional services, or we're using medical as an example. This is a good one, right? You don't want to go see a cardiothoracic surgeon when you've got a foot and ankle problem, or maybe the worst, you go and see a foot and ankle person and you've got a problem with your heart, right? When people go and see a doctor, they're going for I know I need to go see this type of doctor. I wonder if our industry needs something like that. And I'm more to the libertarian end of the spectrum of thinking around this, but some definition of, you're a financial advisor, you're a fiduciary. You're a financial representative and you sell products, and that's okay, that's not a bad thing, but you have a different incentive. Like, do we need something like this? And I know this maybe revolves around the Reg BI
Right.
and this kind of conversation, but even outside of that, like a clearer delineation of roles and titles and what that means? Or
I'm
is it an
skeptical.
education thing?
Yeah, I'm skeptical
Okay.
that's really going to solve it. I don't personally. I don't discriminate in terms of advisors in different channels. There's great advisors
Agreed.
at wirehouses, at insurance firms, banks, RIAs, and there's bad advisors in
All
every
of
single
them, yeah.
channel. I guess one of the ways I think about it is I'm excited about more national brands, national RIA brands that through the dint of their scale and awareness, it just starts to convey what good advice should look like, regardless of the title, but raises that awareness of this is the bar, because that does not exist today. The national brands are, like I said, good
They don't
advisors.
exist.
Yeah. Well, they're not on the RIA side.
Not on the
correct.
RIA side. Yep.
Some starting to get there, starting to see the full page ads and TV commercials with a handful. But just look at the massive deals done in the past year and a half. You're getting more and more firms that are at the 50 billion, 70 billion, and growing. So I think in 5 years it is going to look quite different. And through that, to your point, I think regardless of title, that's going to start to
That'll
raise
drive
awareness.
Yeah. On my side, I agree. I think there's good advisors in every channel. It's just it's a thought I've had around how do we help the consumer sift through all the noise too, right? And can we do that as an industry better? I think,
Right.
To your point, raising the standard of excellence, and that being driven by some large, very successful, firms will be helpful.
Right. And it's a challenge because you've got large retail brokerage firms that are claiming that position themselves.
Correct.
I won't name them, but you know who they are.
Yeah.
Big custodians, retail brokerage firms that have advice arms, they are staking that claim and building awareness around CFPs and fiduciaries and all of that. So I think there's a difference between dealing with a CFP and having half an hour access a year to do a basic financial plan,
Yeah.
and having somebody, and it goes back to your point about time.
Yeah.
I was going to come back to your early career point about 1,000 clients.
Yeah.
What can you do
can't.
for 1,000 clients? So I see these books at different firms, hundreds and hundreds, and even going the other way, clients, investors that say they work with a financial professional, I think are way exaggerated, because it could be somebody I bought a
Product from.
insurance policy, a product from 6 years ago. I don't have a financial advisor. I might say I did because that's all I needed them for. That's all I thought I needed them for. I just feel like we are so under delivering advice to people. I mean, there's a I don't know, a few million people that are probably in a true advisory relationship today, and we're not doing a good job conveying to them the way that they can engage that works for them, where it's not the traditional world of either you're a complete delegator, the old world, the wirehouse world, or you're a complete do-it-yourself. Today, especially younger people, they want some kind of a hybrid.
Yeah.
You've made that point before, where you could even say to them, look, the asset management part, here's some ways you can handle that, some good firms. I could do that, but it's not the lead. And finding different ways to attract those people and understand the way that they want to engage, because clients want to be more involved with a lot of things, which ends up being a win-win because it frees up the advisor time I think a lot of advisors, they just think like robo and digital advice, that's the enemy. That's not complementary versus, wow, if I do that right, that's a better client experience. They're more engaged. They want to be able to turn dials and get involved with that. Frees me up as well to focus on the things that add value.
I think building a service offering for clients, whether they're from backgrounds that didn't have, parents that had advisors. I do think that there's more of a socioeconomic issue that's at play, right? I mean, I grew up in a family that didn't have a financial advisor. My dad's a police officer, and my mom homeschooled me, and then went back and was a public school teacher. And it wasn't that they didn't know what financial advisors were. We just didn't probably have the financial resources. So when I was young growing up, I didn't think anything of financial advisor. When I went to college and then started my business, I didn't think anything until one of them came knocking on my door, and it was like, oh, there's a group of people that do this, right? So
the average
person doesn't.
They still, if they have any perception, it's the old perception, which was financial advisors were the only way I could buy stocks and bonds. They were my conduit. They controlled the keys to the kingdom, so I had to go through them. So stockbroker or insurance salesman.
I've had, this is anecdotal, but we've had people over the last couple of years that are, roughly in my age run that said, yeah, I talked to my dad's, advisor at a big company, and he told me to come back when I have $1 million saved up, right? Their account minimums were $500,000 or $1 million. And I remember this guy saying to me a couple of years ago, and it's been part of why we've designed Lifeworks to have no account minimums, like no asset minimum size. Is he's like, when I get to $1 million, if I've already done it on my own, like, I don't need him then.
Right.
He's like, I want somebody now to help me figure out, like, I've got kids and student loans and taxes and a job and employee benefits. And he's like, I just want to pay somebody to help me with that.
Right. Yeah. Where give me a great digital interface.
Yes.
And I don't need to take up lots and lots of your time. It could be a touch point. Right. It could be a touch point, 2-3 times a year. It's not like my financial plan in my life, things are changing daily. Like my probability of success went from 94 to 95%.
Yeah.
It's I want somebody that I can talk to, make sure I'm on track. But then more importantly, when life happens, when things happen, that's when I want somebody. So as an advisor, I need to make sure I've got those beacons, those listening posts available so that they know they can get me and I'm here for them. That's as a client, that's what I want. I want somebody that I feel like cares about me, wants to know what's going on in my life, obviously has expertise, and is accessible. Like I never would want to feel like I'm bothering somebody. And I see that.
Yeah.
You see clients that's like, oh, they're hard to get a hold of. I don't want to bother them with this or that.
Yeah.
Well,
we live in the Netflix era, right? Like I think clients have a similar, and I'm the same way. I'm probably, the client everybody would want to have and then also not want to have, because when I need something, I want full attention and I want it addressed. I'm thinking of my CPA right now, getting my extended tax returns done. But then I can, I don't need it right now. I've got other stuff to do and I'm super busy. I don't think about it. Right. Somebody's handling it, right? Okay, good segue to maybe shift gears. Unless you can think of a couple, we've covered a lot of challenges that the industry face and they're all opportunities, right?
I do think the something you said just made me think about I used to think of technology, and I probably even said it today a little, that it's there to enable the process you want to deliver. I am starting to come around to say that's not enough, and technology can do more to actually provide that blueprint and use the tech in essence to construct a best practice that then guides the behavior of both the advisor and the client. So we'll probably get to some of these things and where I see the innovation coming, but that's an area my mind has started to shift on.
Yeah, so perfect segue. I was going to say, let's shift from the challenges the industry faces to the opportunities, right? The name of the podcast series, The Future of Advice. So the loaded question, right, is what does Gavin Spitzner believe the wealth management industry is going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years?
Wow. It's not going to be one thing.
No, yeah.
There's room for lots of
But
different
let's pick up on
approaches.
where you were going though, with the not just relying on technology to make it faster or easier for me as the advisor, but actually the technology being smart. Right. I'm not gonna. I hate using the word artificial intelligence because I think it gets batted around like a ping pong ball. And
I look at AI as, there are some true artificial intelligence capabilities out there, but for the most part, when I think about this business,
Yeah.
I think about it as augmented intelligence, not
Yeah.
artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's an area that there's some really cool things available now and coming down the pike that, back to time, it's not magic, but it's taking the time to program your tech stack, your data in ways that make surface insights to you and to your clients more effectively, where you're using machine learning, you're using natural language processing, capabilities like that, infused into CRM to surface those insights, where it's helping you anticipate things. I think that, as a client, that's what you want more than anything. It's like, you should know people like me, not exactly, but generally, and the types of things that we will or should be dealing with coming up before they become a problem. That's what I want.
yeah, like Google Maps telling me while I'm driving that I shouldn't take this route because traffic, and they know that because there's 1,000 or 10,000 or how many people that are plugged into their system that are sitting stuck on a highway somewhere, and their system goes, oh, there's a traffic backup, and reroute.
Right. And it could be, this gets a little big brother-ish, but just to give you a sense of the possibilities through data that you might get through a client portal, and the fact that the client, you've built the trust, they want you to have access to everything in their financial life, investing, spending, all that. You can pick up some things. One of the classic examples is you see somebody buying a crib, something, getting ready for having a child. That okay.
You can
have we had the right
have a reach out
conversations
to 'em. Yeah.
around those things, or they're searching for, maybe you've got some good content about retirement planning on your site, and they start to engage with that. Okay, now, even if we don't have a planned meeting for 3 months, I want to get to them right now. Say, what's going on, Ron? What are you thinking about? Let's talk about what the possibilities are. That we could spend a whole session just on that retirement transition. We've got more people than ever, voluntarily or involuntarily retiring early. I just saw a stat. I think it was 40% of people want to retire before they're 65. The numbers of people that are retiring even earlier are off the charts. So there's so much to be done there, and help people anticipate that, think it through, and do things that they might not even have thought possible. Because on the flip side, the best, how would I put it, the best savers and investors that are in the best possible shape are often the ones that don't know how to downshift, and they can't spend, and they can't, even if financially they could maybe not retire, but stop full-time work and start to do some different things earlier. They don't know how. For me, that's, and I've taken this completely off track, but
yeah, good.
This is an advisor that can help let's say a couple or an individual think about those things, really in a deep way. You've done an amazing job saving. You've got possibilities now. And maybe when you're 63, you want to downshift, keep your hand in something, and actually do more work when you turn 70, part-time work, but you can afford to go to cooking school,
and do those things.
Right. When you're active, because we've got all the stats that show, you mentioned Weekly Reader. I just had a thing about spending patterns, and what it shows, most people just take the RMD, and it's not aligned to really spending patterns over time. And it's just such it's a tragedy. I've seen this personally. We all have examples of people, parents, aunts, uncles, friends, that they don't know, and they, if somebody was guiding them, they might have said, you know what, I can do something different. I can afford to do it.
Yeah, it's almost like not giving them permission, but teaching them how to reframe so that, spending down what they've now accumulated all their life, that mental switch from I'm building to now, okay, maybe no more paychecks coming in, and now it's okay if it goes down, right? Your point is actually really, really a good one, in that I think part of winning the future of advice is going to be building educational tools and the communication tools that are going to be needed so you can have these frequent conversations with clients in real time. I mean, I was just out west visiting some clients, and great savers. They've now both fully retired. They're in their like late 50s, maybe just turned 60. And we were joking about they're still in frugal saving mode. Like, I think we were having a conversation about buying an expensive golf putter or something like this. And I was like, without even looking at your financial plan, guys, go buy it.
Right.
I know you're okay, right? We've looked at the math 6 ways from Sunday, and this $500 expenditure is not going to shift it.
Right.
And we just had a fun conversation about that. But I think, those things have to happen more frequently.
Right. And you use the word permission. I think a lot of it is actually giving them permission, treating them and having the kind of relationship that you would have with your own mother.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. That to me is what we aspire to. And what you would want your mother to be, have a relationship with an advisor that would care about her the way you care about her, and the expertise and the coaching ability to actually get them to live their life to the fullest and feel confident and not afraid to spend, whatever it is, $15 a month on Netflix, and be able to watch things or go on a trip or whatever it is when they can still take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that mental shift is understated. I've built some anecdotal rules of thumb that I counsel our clients on. Most of my clients that I still have some handling or interactions with are business owners, entrepreneurs. And I always tell them, look, as you get ready to sell your business, you should really have a very solid game plan of what are all the things that you're actually going to do to stay engaged mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, when you stop, working 40, 50, 60 hours on your business. Because if you don't have that already pre-planned, if you can't answer the question, what are the things that I've always wanted to do that I can't do right now because I'm working? Like, if you don't have an answer to that question, you're going to retire. It's not going to be fulfilling. You're going to maybe bounce back into work, or start staring at your retirement account balances every day.
and think about that. As hard as that is with an individual, now look at that with a couple.
Yeah.
Where you've got people that probably haven't done a good job talking about these things. What does life after full-time work look like? What do we want to do? Where do we want to live? How are we going to spend our time? That's when you talk about the future of advice, I think I'm hopeful that that's a big part of it, which is a much better job getting both parties of a couple, whatever that means, engaged in those deep conversations, because they probably are not equipped to do it by themselves.
Yeah, I think thematically what this sounds like is this idea of life coaching or facilitated, kind of like strategic planning conversations. I mean, your background's in strategic planning and consulting, right? So that's what I'm hearing when you say something like that.
Yeah, the future, I'll say it this way, the future of financial advice involves a lot more crying in a good way. I heard, and I stole that. If I have a superpower, it's my networking, stealing the best things from all kinds of different people. And somebody told me this recently. We were talking about how do you know if you did a good job engaging, in this case it was a husband and wife, in a planning conversation, and they said if there were tears, then we know we went to a real place. It wasn't about the numbers, things that a calculator can do, or Monte Carlo. We went to a deep place about what the money's actually for. So future financial advice, more crying, but in a positive way, in a cathartic way,
Yeah.
I think in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think that is. I'm not a big crier myself, although I can
Not for
appreciate.
everybody.
No, but I can appreciate the wisdom of bringing empathy into a business that oftentimes becomes very is maybe advisors, and I'm projecting myself here. When I was younger, I used to think that my value was in my technical expertise, right? My ability to blend a lot of different knowledge of taxes and this and this and this, and 5-6 years ago, right before we started Lifeworks, one of the things that hit me was a conversation with my dad, who again is in law enforcement, and was just had an incident that was a close call. And I just remember saying something to him like, "I'm not ready to be you yet, Dad. So you gotta, stay tight." And he was like, "Well, you're very much ready." And I was like, "Well, what does this even mean?" So I read a book called The Council of Dads. Beautiful book. I recommend everybody reading it. It's about an author. His name's Bruce Feiler. He just has twin daughters, and he finds out he has cancer, and so he starts journaling, this event. And it starts out with him thinking about all the things he's going to miss about his kid's life, right? Graduation and kindergarten and this and this and this. And at the end of the first chapter, the whole thing flips, and he says, "But what are my daughters going to miss about not having a dad? And how do I fill that?" And so he writes 8 letters to 8 different men and says, "Will you step into my daughter's lives and be their council of dads? Teach them to love to travel, teach them to face their fears." And each chapter is one of these stories. And where I'm going with this is the emotional response to thinking about the life's work or the money that somebody saved, the financial aspect of it, gets translated at the heart, right? Where the decisions actually should be made, which is, why did we do this?
That's when it hits home. I had an experience like this recently. I got a little emotional where my daughter, who's about to be a senior in college, got a job offer for after she graduates. And I just had this little moment, like whatever we were able to do to put her, I mean, she did all the work, but to help put her in a position to succeed, that's what it was for. That's what it's like, those moments. That's when it all makes sense. And you made me think too about the technical and the emotional, back to team dynamics and talent acquisition, all of that. That is an area where I see RIAs, some of my clients, getting very smart about how they structure things and say, this, we need both. We need the technicians and we need the people with high EQ.
Yep.
And we need to be very intentional about that and making sure we've got both, and they're teaming on clients and we're using them effectively versus looking to have one person embody all that. That's very, as you know, very rare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we built a team practice when we set Lifeworks up, and I would tell every advisor listening, if you have the ability to build a team around you that has a shared vision for how you want to serve your clients and some alignment of values, finding people, whether you use the Enneagram or the DISC or different tools to try and understand communication preferences, EQ, things like this, it's been tremendously helpful for us, right? I admitted my initial frame when I started was always thinking about the technical aspect of it, and I'm oftentimes short to kind of cut to the problem, like, oh, we can go do this and start running with it without, and then my team will sometimes remind me, like, no, we got to step back and relay the framework for why this is important before we go in and talk about what the solutions are, right?
So and especially back to my point about dealing with a couple, even more pronounced. There's research that says people, individuals or couples, they want to deal with a diverse team. Yes. They don't want solo male, solo female. They want diversity. Yeah. It's and back to retention and how do you grow with people over time. That's going to put you in good stead to be able to do that.
So the future of our industry, 5, 10, 15 years out, starts looking more like, and I hate using the word life coach because I think that's a bastardized term, but it starts looking more like coach, right? Strategic facilitator, right?
Guide,
Expert
guide. Certainly very digital is going to be a big part. It's not the only piece, but people want to have access when they want it, how they want it. So, the ability to customize a digital experience. We haven't really talked about the tech, which is fine, but that's probably one of the top things I get asked about it and looking for support around is how do we make our digital presence match everything we just talked about?
Yeah,
because we do all this great life coaching and planning, but then the portal shows market values and performance.
Doesn't support it.
Like, what just happened? There's a disconnect. So that's something I'm excited about. Is there's some good things out there and coming that do a much better job reflecting that experience and making sure that we've got the ability to collaborate in that environment on the things that matter to me, which might be different next week and next year.
So and maybe you can specifically, I think everybody listening would love to hear if you have some suggestions around tech platforms that are either existent right now or that are coming. I think a lot of the listeners to this would be very interested in hearing your thoughts on where they could find something like that. Because I have heard this before, that the client portal lags significantly relative to the in-person experience, let's say.
Well, I won't name names, although my instinct is to turn the tables and ask you about Lifeworks. So I'll get you on mine, and we'll do that one.
Fair enough.
So not specific names, but the traditional planning companies, they're moving in that direction. So I think there's better stuff coming. But back to my point about RIA built capabilities.
Yes.
I mean, you're practitioners. We just saw this with our friend Lakshan and Vanilla. Different capability, but similar approach of what you want, and now the ease of access to building out technology. We're in such a different place. So there's some very cool specialized capabilities that are there coming. There's some neat things internationally that are starting to come into the U.S. So I think that's an area where I'm probably speaking on both sides of my mouth, because on one hand I want to say most advisors are not builders and shouldn't be thinking about, I'm going to go cobble together this and this and this and this and this and put together. There's some that can do that. They're using Zapier and all these great things. Most are not. So, with APIs, with connectivity, and with some people that are kind of building those preset Lego blocks, it's more doable now than it has been. So that's having a more customizable, planning-centric client portal with collaboration capabilities, content. That's an area where we're starting to see some capabilities, some marketing capabilities where you can personalize and use the AI to say, what are they engaging with? How do they like to engage? Do they like videos? Do they like emails? Do they want to text?
Do they watch it? When do they watch it?
Right.
Yeah, things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not tech just for tech's sake. That is meeting the need. Most of the firms that are furthest ahead, we talked about AI briefly. On AI, they've come around to say it's not, the real value is not next best action, like what's the next best product I can sell. It's engagement.
Yep.
It's how do they engage? What can we learn from that? And then how can we better serve up content at the right time, through the right device, all of that.
Yeah, because products or advice or even the monetization of the relationship will probably, I would think, follow behind whether it's a prospect or client engagement around content and what you're bringing to them. They have to see that value there. Yeah.
Right. And if you do a good job, the solution, you're not selling it. It's just like, okay, if this is what matters to you, you're trying to fund these goals or create this kind of income stream.
Yep.
And you've built that trust. That just becomes the default. In fact, that's where I'd say advisors should look at what some of the robos are doing, where they're starting to lead with planning to a much higher degree when it comes to the investment, the model selection, all that. you go through, and I've opened up like
Yep.
50 of these things to try them all. They're very smooth, and it gets to
Yes.
the point where I don't question. It's not like, is this the right investment vehicle or how much what? It's like, oh, to do what you just helped me uncover,
It's
need.
a 3-minute setup. Boom,
Right.
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've asked advisors and firm leaders around the country the last couple of years and some of my coaching group, like how many of you, actually I did this when I first got into Scratchworks and was giving some of the pitch. I said, take 10 people on your team and give them a small stipend to open investment accounts at robo-advisors and video and chronicle, like the process. And just say like, we need to take the best that the leading robo-advisors are doing. Ease of opening accounts, speed of access, on-demand content.
And even the goals-based planning part.
Yes.
That's the part that is really interesting. Don't kid yourself. There's big firms and there's somebody in her garage right now trying to use tech to build out self-driving money,
Exactly.
planning,
Yep.
build in the behaviorals, all of that. But look at how they're doing that. Where I think I wrote about this in one of the weekly readers. Could have been about Vanguard and Vanguard Digital. Mm-hmm. I started going through this process, and I'm like, this is taking a little longer than I thought. But as I'm doing it, I'm saying, you know what? I'm getting something out of this. Based on the questions that they ask, and they're very smart about the questions that they ask, I'm learning something about myself. I'm getting value beyond opening the account
Yes.
out of this process. Very clever. There's an art and a science to that we could all learn from.
Yeah. No, that's, I'm going to have to go do that one because it's been a while since I've opened an account on there. I'm going to have to go check that one out. What are some of the things that, I won't say, the question would be keep you up at night about what's going on in our industry or with advisors. But if the frame of people that are listening are mostly financial advisors and owners of RIAs, things like that, what are some of the things that you think should be keeping us, the owners and the financial advisors, up at night? What should we be worrying about and thinking about? Other than my 16-year-old driving right now.
It'll all work out. Gosh. I look at things, business is good, right?
Yes.
There's, I won't say it's hard to mess up, but it's almost hard to mess up because, like I said, the bar is low, markets at an all-time high. We did see a big jump in clients looking for advisors for the first time, coming through and out of COVID. So the demand is there, the opportunity is there. So I don't look at it as keeping me up at night and negative. What keeps me up at night is, or what should be keeping them up at night is what more we could be doing. And I think we avoided maybe using the term democratization of advice.
We did, yeah.
But to take that, because that is one of my motivating forces at this point in my career. It's everybody, whether it's looking at how you save better, earlier, more often, spending patterns up to the ultra wealthy, and making sure that they're able to use what they've worked for. I think I saw a stat that 80% of the ultra high net worth are self-made, that it's not through inheritance. So back to your point,
That would not surprise me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So helping them at whatever point of the wealth continuum you are, make confident decisions and not have money be a negative. I just look in real life. I look at people know I'm somewhere in the business, friends, and like if something happens, a divorce or something, they're like, do you have suggestions? Who can help? And it has nothing to do with investment management. It has everything to do with, is this somebody that will take the time to listen to me and find out what I'm thinking about and help me think about the things I don't even know to think about and make better decisions. This is back to what keeps me up. These are the things that keep clients up at night.
Yeah.
People wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, am I going to be okay?
Yeah.
Or even positive things could be negative because now it's like maybe an inheritance. It scares the hell out of people.
Yeah.
A lot of times. Look at all the track record of lottery winners.
It's the same. It's the same track record from what I've read as people that have large inheritances.
Right.
Usually within 10 plus years, it's evaporated.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that it might sound silly, but that's what keeps me up at night is how do we go faster to be able to serve more people better? And that is looking at technology not as the answer, but part of the answer to scale good advice delivery in ways back to maybe where we were at the beginning, ways that people can consume that it actually drives behavior, not like not delivered in a way where it might be mathematically correct, but not received in a way where people feel like, oh yeah, that makes sense for me.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a couple of times, and I think this is an important word that gets stressed to me by my business coach all the time: scalable, right? Can you build a model where you can deliver valuable advice to a range of like wealth holders, wealth creators, right? And do it at scale, right? Meaning, can you build a system that maybe you have a certain number of advisors for every client or for every numbers of clients, but you can repeat it and grow it. Then you have a business. Then you're part of the democratization of finance, which is also something that I'm super passionate about, right? Which is, we live in a world where everybody has access to pretty much all the same information, but yet we have some of the lowest financial literacy, of any of the developed countries, right? And this idea of democratizing both the educational components of it and the delivery, and being able to say, look, we can, that's why I love what Apex does, right? We can open investment accounts for, a young person and have $100 in the account. And while we're not running our firm on that one $100 account, that account is still profitable for us because we built for scale. Right.
Now, how you scale, make it a repeatable process, and really think about it around education, not textbook type education, but real life. Back to my daughter, I think about all these people coming to the workforce. Most of them don't have a clue. Maybe they had a personal finance class in high school, but maybe not. And even if they did, and they want to be told. They want to be not told in the sense of you must do this, but they kind of want to be told people in your situation
that are doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Yep.
It's the TikTok generation.
Yep.
When she went to Chicago recently, I'm like, all right, how are you kind of figuring out what you're going to do? TikTok. They go to TikTok for everything.
Watch some videos, look some influencers, plan their life.
It's scary, but at the same time, I don't want to be, this doom and gloom. There's actually some good stuff, but how do you sift through it? And how as an advisory firm, through personal conversation or resources you make available, how do you inform in a way that, like TikTok, where they feel like, oh yeah, they're talking to me in the style that connects to me?
It's a skill set. I'm not on TikTok. I hope to avoid it, but I could see, we do a lot with Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and while we're not, Navy SEALs in the digital space, maybe compared to some of our peers, we might be considered to be quite proficient there. But there is something to be said for how TikTok and platforms like that can connect to people at scale and still make it feel personalized and relevant, right. and there's something to be learned there. All right, 3 final questions. This is my favorite question that I ask every guest. If you could give one piece of advice to the young, hungry, next-gen advisor listening to this, and when I say young, I don't even necessarily mean age. I just mean maybe new to the industry that wants to grow.
Right.
not the person that's been in it for 30 years that's kind of resting on their laurels. If you give one piece of advice, that young, hungry, growth-oriented advisor, what would it be?
All right, it's going to be one piece of advice, but it has two
You can
components.
layer it,
Can
yep.
I cheat a little?
Yes. It could be a
It's
multivariate answer.
outsource everything possible that's not core to helping you grow your business or deliver personalized advice. Don't try to be all things, all people. And really focus on specialization and marketing to that segment. So we're talking growth. So marketing, which was my original background. So near and dear to my heart. That's got to be the key. And you talked about some things like Facebook and all. Having people on your team, not necessarily working for you, but on your broader team that knows that space inside and out. Just hypercritical these days. I see a lot of people wasting a lot of money and time barking up the wrong tree when it comes to growth strategies. So being a digital marketing black belt and having people that can help you do that is absolutely number one. If you're talking growth, you've got to do all the hard work of thinking about your client journey. How do you onboard them? Look at onboarding as a process, not account opening, but how do I show
How do you bring them into the family?
Right.
Yeah.
And doing that at scale is important. And the tech facilitation of that is really important. And not, maybe I'll say it this way too, it's like you said, bringing them in the family, spending more time up front doing that will pay off huge dividends because you're training them how to think about this relationship and taking the time to build the trust, because then they're going to share more. It becomes this flywheel. Clients, there's a lot of research that shows clients will gladly share a lot of personal information with you if you use it effectively for them, show them how that plays back, because then they're going to aggregate all their accounts, share that with you. They're going to give you that transparency, but you have to deliver value against it.
So outsource everything that you possibly can. Okay. And then the second piece was get really good at digital marketing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the second question, and it's in the same vein, and it might end up having a similar feel to the answer, but
I don't give short, simple answers.
No. I don't either.
I have layers of complexity, Ron.
I just like 10,000 word answers. What's the advice that you'd give to the owner of a firm today, or if there's executives listening that are part of maybe a larger national organization? What's the one piece of advice you'd give them about what do they need to be doing and thinking and working on to win the future of advice?
This one's easy. I can't give a one-word answer.
Okay.
People. Getting the right people on the bus. It is everything. Culture. As I get inside organizations, whether you're talking about a 50-person firm or 5,000, 50,000, this is the downfall of firms that are struggling. They tolerate people that are, especially management, that are not on the same page. They let things go and try to fix it. Like a lot of the people, these leaders, they're successful. They think they can fix things versus recognizing they just don't have the right people. Because you can have the best technology, you can do every single thing we talked about today,
and not have the right people,
and you're not going to execute. I think on my website, strategy is easy, execution is hard. Right? Strategically, a lot of the stuff we talk about, it's inarguable. Execution is hard, and most of that has to do with people that are not aligned or they're in the wrong position. Back to organizational design, you might have people that are could be superstars, but they're in the wrong role.
Yeah.
You're asking them to do things that aren't in their DNA. And so step back and think about that. But then certainly new talent acquisition, you talked about some of the capabilities out there. Spend the money, spend the time.
Do heavy lifting.
Right?
Yeah. Years ago, one of my mentors told me something to the effect, and I might be getting his quote wrong, but it's all right. It's something like culture trumps strategy every day of the week. And he told me, hire for values and culture, train for the skills that you need.
100%.
And it's more difficult. It's more difficult in practice than it is to say.
It's really hard now.
You know, I mean, as somebody who has roughly a 20-some person team, right, I'm starting to really recognize the value of having strong culture, right, and having a defined culture. Like, this is what Lifeworks means and stands for. This is the type of people we are, because the farther away I get from being able to interact on a day-to-day basis with everybody on the team, which is really where I'm at now, right, we have to have that.
It's really hard. And there's a dearth of talent.
Yes.
I mean, that's the number one issue I hear from RIA owners and executives is, where's the talent? I need a COO. Like, we've outgrown where we are. I'm getting pulled into everything. I need somebody to kind of run the day-to-day so I can focus on the strategic. Advisors, home office. I think firms that hit that inflection point, and they've done an incredible job, but they've outgrown their talent and their staffing. Hard time finding good people. There's such the RIA channel, fastest growing channel year after year after year.
Yep.
And lacking the pool.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think people and talent is going to be maybe even more important than technology in the future. I think the technology will either be forced upon us kicking and screaming, or we'll end up adopting the right pieces. But having the right people is...
It is, I'd say, a silver lining with COVID the past year and a half is firms are more thoughtful now about hiring for those areas that you talked about, regardless of geography. Because and I won't say it's across the board, but there's more firms that are realizing if we do a good job with culture, putting people in the right positions, I don't need to see them in the office every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is a shift, right? I mean, that's something I talked about with Anders from Facet, was they don't have a corporate office. Right. Everybody's virtual. Okay. The third question. We'll end here, and then you can close us out with whatever thoughts. I'm a big reader. I read everything. Your weekly reader as well. What should advisors and again leaders of RIAs that want to be thinking about or getting plugged into the future of advice and some of the things that you digest every day, right, and put out in your weekly reader? But what are some of the things that advisors or people that they should be following on, whether it's social media or reading their books? What are some of the things that we should be plugged into if we want to stay current or be running along at the same pace, as opposed to the world changes around us and we wake up and go, how did all this stuff happen?
There's so much out there. Social media. Yep. There's a lot of crap, so you got to cut through it to find the good stuff. But the good stuff is amazing. I've taken it, like, I'll bookmark a tweet, something that will make me think of something. I use what do I use? Pocket to like save everything I see that might be interesting. But yeah, I mean, don't just blanket things as bad, like Twitter. Mm-hmm. There's some great content, and I've met people that now I consider friends, even some I haven't met in real life, through Twitter. LinkedIn, not so much. Twitter more so. There's some great, there's podcasts and videos. What you're doing with Future Advice, fantastic. Obviously, folks like Michael Kitsis, tons of amazing content. It's there. I mean, part of the problem is there's too much.
Yes.
So I try to add value by
distilling
doing that work and then distilling it down. But
Now, is your weekly reader for anybody that subscribes, or is it for a subset of people? Or
the focus is C-suite at RIAs and broker dealers, but it goes to family and friends and anybody that wants to put up with my nonsense. So, yeah, happy to share that with anybody. Conferences.
I'm when hopeful, they come back.
I'm hopeful that we're coming back to those.
Yeah.
Great sessions, but more importantly, the hallway conversations, the dinners, just talking to peers and being a sponge. And you're gonna, for every 5 things you hear, 4 will probably not make any sense for you, but that one gem that you can say, I can see how I can apply this. They're out there, but yeah, I think the industry trades have gotten much better, not just reporting news, but even like having a voice around things like diversity and inclusion and being a little more proactive about.
Intentional was the word you used. That's the right word.
Yeah. So I think that's a positive I've seen just in the past 2-3 years.
Awesome. Well, Gavin, I have enjoyed this conversation. You and I could go for hours about subsets in artificial intelligence, the people, the culture, the strategy. We'll definitely have you back on, and maybe
I'm going to turn the tables on you and get you on mine and talk Lifeworks.
Happy to. But we'll definitely want to have you back on, and we'll do a specific episode on revenue growth strategies and some of the work you do there, because I think that a lot of advisors, myself included, that are looking to grow might not necessarily have the background and the tools and the skill sets to think about building, revenue models or business models, right? Because we're trained to pick up the phone and call 100 people a day, and that was the model. So love to have you back and get your thoughts on that. Thank you for sharing some insights today, for traveling into the city, although you can't beat hanging out here on a Wednesday afternoon.
We're going for a run now, right, around the reservoir?
Sure, why not?
It's only 85.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for being here. Any final thoughts or comments you want to share with the listeners before we sign off?
No, Ron, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. Gavin, thank you. All right, guys, that's it for another episode of The Future of Advice. My guest on today's episode is Gavin Spitzner. You can find him on LinkedIn, although, as he just said, Twitter is probably more appropriate. His handle there is @GavinSpitzner. Do check him out. I would highly encourage you to message him and ask to be added to his weekly wealth management reader. I read it every weekend. It can be anywhere from a 10-minute read to a 45-minute plus read, depending on how much content's in there, but he does a great job distilling it down. Somebody that you definitely should be following and staying connected with in the industry. And thank you once again for watching. My name is Ron Bullis, the founder of Lifeworks Advisors. Take care.